This case isn't about a random act of violence. It's about love, twisted, obsessive, and deadly. In the quiet town of Hollow Creek, a woman named Emily Carter, known for her kindness and her small flower shop, fell in love with a man who seemed perfect, Daniel Moore, a charming architect with a secret darker than anyone could imagine. What started as romance soon turned into control, surveillance, and finally, something far more horrifying. Today, we're diving into one of the most disturbing stories of obsession and possession you'll ever hear, where love became a prison and escape came too late. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming true crime documentaries. Your support helps us bring you more real-life cases that uncover the darkest corners of the human mind. Stay with us till the end, because what Daniel did to make sure Emily would belong only to him will leave you speechless. In the peaceful lakeside town of Hollow Creek, life moved slowly, almost dreamlike. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and neighbors greeted each other by name. At the heart of this little town was Emily Carter, a warm and gentle woman who owned Bloom and Vine, a small flower shop that had become a local treasure. Her arrangements brightened weddings, hospital rooms, and front porches all over town. Everyone admired her kindness and steady optimism, even though she lived alone. Her days were simple: early mornings at the flower market, afternoons arranging bouquets, and quiet evenings reading by the lake with her dog, Clover. Everything changed the day Daniel Moore arrived. He was new to Hollow Creek, a talented architect who had come from the city to start fresh. He rented a small cottage near the water and spent his evenings sketching on the porch. When he first stepped into Emily's shop to order flowers for a client, he seemed shy but charming, his calm voice and attentive eyes leaving an impression. Emily helped him choose the perfect bouquet, and that brief encounter turned into many more. He began visiting often, sometimes to buy flowers, sometimes just to talk. Their friendship blossomed quickly, drawing the attention of everyone in town. To the outside world, they looked perfect together, two kind, creative souls finding love in a quiet place. Daniel was thoughtful, always bringing her coffee, fixing things around her shop, and admiring her work. Emily, who had spent years focused on others, finally felt seen. But behind Daniel's gentle smile hid something possessive, something that would soon turn their idyllic romance into a chilling story the town would never forget. The first few months of their relationship seemed almost magical. Daniel treated Emily with such attention that she often wondered how she had lived without him before. He knew her favorite tea, remembered every small detail about her day, and constantly told her how lucky he was. At first, it felt like love in its purest form, but little by little, something in his behavior began to shift. He started asking questions that felt more like inspections: who she talked to, where she went, why she stayed late at the shop. At first, she brushed it off as care and concern, but soon, his tone carried an edge of suspicion. He began showing up at her shop unannounced, staying for hours under the excuse of helping her with deliveries or repairs. He took over her bookkeeping, saying he wanted to make sure no one was overcharging her. He even suggested she stop taking large wedding orders because they took too much of her time. Slowly, her independence began to slip away without her noticing. Emily's friends started to drift from her life, as Daniel found small reasons to dislike each one of them. He claimed her best friend was jealous, that her coworkers didn't appreciate her, that the town gossip wanted to ruin their happiness. Emily started missing her weekly dinners with friends. Her laughter grew quieter, and her bright energy dulled. Daniel had wrapped himself around every part of her life, leaving her with less space to breathe. She told herself it was love, devotion, even, but deep down, a quiet unease began to grow. Something about Daniel's affection no longer felt safe. It felt like a cage, disguised as care. One stormy afternoon, when thunder rolled over Hollow Creek and rain streaked down the windows, Emily decided to tidy Daniel's office while he was out. He had been spending more time there lately, locking the door whenever she entered and keeping certain papers hidden. She told herself she was only trying to help, but curiosity had been building for weeks. As she dusted the shelves, her eyes landed on a drawer that didn't match the others. It had a small keyhole and a faint scratch near the handle, as if it had been forced open before. Something about it drew her closer. She remembered finding a tiny brass key in a box of spare change weeks earlier, and now she wondered if it belonged there. Her hands trembled as she turned the key and heard the faint click of the lock. Inside, she found a stack of photographs. At first, she thought they were just memories from their relationship, but as she flipped through them, her breath caught. The pictures weren't moments she recognized. Many were of her alone, walking her dog, standing at the flower market, closing her shop at night. The angles were wrong, distant, and hidden, as if someone had been watching her from afar. Beneath the photos lay a notebook filled with disturbing details. It contained lists of her daily routines, times she left home, even notes about what she wore. Scrawled in the margins were strange sentences. "She is safest with me, and soon she will understand." Emily's skin prickled as the truth settled in. Daniel hadn't fallen in love with her by chance. He had been studying her, observing her every move long before they met. Emily barely slept that night. Every sound in the house made her flinch. Every shadow on the wall seemed to move. The realization that Daniel had been watching her long before they met filled her with a terror she couldn't shake. She sat in the darkness, clutching the notebook, knowing she couldn't confront him. The man she thought she loved was a stranger, someone dangerous. When the morning came, she made her decision. She would leave Hollow Creek before Daniel returned from work. Moving quickly, she packed a small bag with only what she needed: some clothes, her phone, and Clover's leash. She took the notebook and photos as evidence, locked the door behind her, and drove away without looking back. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy, mirroring the weight in her chest. She drove to her sister's house in Maple Ridge, 2 towns away, where she finally allowed herself to cry. Her sister urged her to call the police, and though Emily hesitated at first, fear won over shame. She handed over everything she had found. When police officers went to question Daniel later that day, they discovered his house empty. His phone was off, his car gone, and his office completely cleared out. It was as if he had vanished the moment she left. Days passed with no sign of him. Emily changed her number, moved again under a different name, and opened a new flower shop miles away. For a short time, it seemed she had escaped. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel wasn't finished with her, that somewhere out there, he was still watching, still waiting for the moment to return. For several months, Emily tried to rebuild her life. She renamed her flower shop, chose a quiet neighborhood, and surrounded herself with friendly faces who knew nothing of her past. For the first time in a long while, she began to breathe again. The nightmares grew less frequent, and Clover's soft presence gave her comfort. It almost felt as though Daniel had truly disappeared, a nightmare buried in another life. But that illusion shattered one morning when she arrived at the shop and found a single orchid sitting on the counter. It wasn't one she sold. Its petals were rare and exotic, a kind Daniel used to bring her. There was no note, no delivery record, no trace of who had left it. At first, she convinced herself it was a coincidence, perhaps a kind gesture from a customer. But then it happened again. Every week, another orchid arrived, always the same type, always without a name. Soon, she began receiving anonymous phone calls. When she answered, there was only silence on the line, a faint breathing that froze her blood. Her nights became sleepless once more. One evening, she closed the shop later than usual and noticed a small envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a photograph of her standing outside the shop, that very morning, watering plants. The picture was taken from across the street. Terrified, she called the police, who combed through security footage but found nothing. Whoever was doing this knew how to stay hidden. Though they told her not to panic, Emily could feel it in her bones. Daniel had found her again, and this time, he wasn't going to let her slip away. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, months after the haunting deliveries began. A hiker reported seeing smoke curling through the treetops near the abandoned cabins in the woods just outside Hollow Creek. The area had long been deserted, overgrown, and forgotten, but local authorities decided to investigate. When they reached the clearing, they found a small, weathered cabin with broken windows and a half-burned fire pit out front. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mold and ash. Dust covered everything, except for one wall. The walls were plastered with photographs of Emily. Some were old, from her days at the first flower shop. Others were recent, taken from angles that proved someone had been watching her again. There were newspaper clippings about her new beginning. articles about missing persons, and notes scribbled in Daniel's handwriting. On a small table sat several orchids in glass vases, each one carefully labeled with dates and locations. It was like a museum of obsession. In the center of the room, police found a narrow bed neatly made with sheets identical to the ones Emily once used in her home. Next to it lay a burned piece of paper. The message, though partly destroyed, was still legible. If she won't be mine in life, she will be in death. The discovery chilled investigators to the core. For weeks, search teams combed the woods, convinced Daniel was nearby. But no trace of him appeared. No footprints, no food, no sign of recent living. It was as if he had melted back into the wilderness, waiting for the perfect moment to make his next move. A few weeks after the discovery of the cabin, Emily vanished. It started like any ordinary morning. She opened her shop at 9, greeted her assistant, and went about arranging a new window display. Customers came and went, the register chimed, and by closing time everything seemed normal. But when her assistant arrived the next day, the shop lights were still on, the door unlocked. Emily's car sat in the parking lot with the keys still in the ignition and her phone resting on the passenger seat. The only thing out of place was a single orchid lying delicately on the dashboard. Panic spread quickly through the small town. Police searched her home, the shop, and every road leading out of the area, but there were no signs of a struggle. It was as though she had simply stepped out of her life and disappeared. The community that had once admired her kindness now filled with whispers and fear. Candlelight vigils were held by the lake, where she often walked Clover. Her dog, found alone in the yard, barked for days as if waiting for her to return. Weeks turned into months. Search parties combed the surrounding woods and drained parts of the lake, but no new evidence surfaced, until one quiet morning when a fisherman noticed something floating near the water's edge. It was a small wooden jewelry box, smooth and pale from the current. Inside lay Emily's favorite silver necklace and a photograph of her smiling beside Daniel, their faces frozen in the happiness that had once fooled everyone. The message was unmistakable. Daniel had returned to finish what he started, and this time, he had made sure she could never escape him again. 2 long months after Emily's disappearance, the case seemed to be fading into silence. Investigators had exhausted every lead, and the town of Hollow Creek tried to move on, though a quiet sadness lingered in every conversation. Then, an anonymous call came to the police station late one evening. The voice was distorted and calm, giving only a location, the same woods where the cabin had been found before. Officers were dispatched immediately, uncertain if it was another hoax. When they arrived, the air was cold, the trees eerily still. They followed faint tracks to the back of the cabin, where one officer noticed freshly disturbed soil near the floorboards. They pried them open, revealing a hidden staircase leading underground. What they found beneath would haunt them forever. In the dim light, a glass coffin rested at the center of a small, sealed chamber. Inside was Emily, perfectly preserved, dressed in the clothes she had worn the day she vanished. Around her were hundreds of orchids, their scent overwhelming, their beauty sickening in such a place. It was clear Daniel had built this room himself, using his architectural skills to craft a private tomb, a twisted shrine to the woman he claimed to love. Evidence showed he had been living nearby, watching every move of the investigation, staying just close enough to feel her presence. When police finally tracked him down, he was found by the lake, quietly sketching Emily's face in a notebook. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. When asked why he did it, he simply said, "Now she'll never leave me again." A final, chilling confession that revealed just how far his obsession had gone. Daniel's trial became one of the most talked about cases in the state's history. The courtroom was packed every day, filled with reporters, grieving friends, and curious onlookers drawn to the horrifying story of a man whose love had turned into something monstrous. The evidence was overwhelming. The photographs, the notes, the secret chamber beneath the cabin. Daniel never tried to deny what he had done. He sat through the proceedings with a blank expression, showing neither anger nor remorse. When given the chance to speak, he said only that he had kept his promise, and that Emily was finally safe forever. His calmness unsettled everyone who heard him. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even behind bars, he continued to write letters addressed to Emily, describing their perfect life together, letters that were never delivered but stored as evidence of his unbroken delusion. Meanwhile, the town of Hollow Creek tried to heal. Emily's flower shop was turned into a memorial garden, its profits donated to organizations supporting victims of stalking and domestic violence. Her sister managed the garden, ensuring that orchids, Emily's favorite, bloomed there year-round. Visitors often claimed that the place felt both beautiful and sorrowful, filled with the weight of everything lost. Some said they could still sense her presence near the flowers, as if she lingered among them, watching over the people who came to remember her. Hollow Creek eventually moved forward, but the story of Emily Carter and Daniel Moore remained a lasting warning, a reminder that obsession can hide behind affection, and that the most dangerous kind of love is the one that refuses to let go.